Most welcome to our second video in the series Famous Games. And maybe I should tell a little bit about what I mean with the famous games. There are a lot of lists, 100 games you should know and so on if you search on the internet. And what people think that you should know is very diverse, to say the least. Some list a lot of games from the 1850s, 60s. Yeah, nice combinations, and maybe even Morphy showed far deeper understanding than his opponents and so on. And all that is perfectly fine. But I try to show you games that I think is helpful to you when you play your own games, simply. And it means that I don't look back in time very much more than to current masterpieces. Okay, the first game was from 1938, and today we will have a game from 1963. But you can also expect to see games from, let's say, 2010 or 2024 even. So I just try to find games with good themes, good principles are displayed in the games and so on. So that is what I want to offer you. So then we go about it. Today we are heading back to 1963 to the US Championship. And that was a very interesting tournament from a historical point of view, because Robert James Fischer, Bobby Fischer, won all 11 games. I don't think it has happened after 1963 either. So he showed that he was outstanding compared to his US opponents. And we come to the game of round 11. And white is Robert Byrne. There were two brothers, one Donald, a bit weaker than Robert, and then Robert Byrne. And yeah, I mean, he was a decent grandmaster, obviously. And he has the white pieces. And there must be interesting psychological things that we have to take into account. You play white, you must be a bit worried because you have seen Fischer's hand, how he treated, how he humiliated 10 of his all of the 10 former opponents. And now we are at the 11th round, the last round. And Byrne is white. Will he try now to snatch a draw, at least, from Fischer? And in such case, how should he go about it? Of course, Fischer had already made an historical performance, 10 out of 10. But of course, it must have been in his mind that he so badly wanted to take 100%, 11 out of 11. And how should he go about it? So, the game starts with white playing pawn to delta 4. Pawn to delta 4. Fischer goes for knight to foxtrot 6. Knight to foxtrot 6. And Byrne plays Charlie 4. Pawn to Charlie 4. And black goes for pawn to golf 6. Pawn to golf 6. And we know that often Fischer employed the King's Indian defense very successfully, but also he frequently played the Grünfeld. We will see what will come. White plays pawn to golf 3, pawn to golf 3. So very solid setup. We can, from this move, we can guess that white doesn't go for the throat. Sorry, my bad English pronunciation. for the throat. He doesn't want to just go for the kill in the opening. He wants to have a stable position. Fischer plays pawn to Charlie 6. Pawn to Charlie 6. A move that can both continue with if the pawn then goes to delta 6, we would still be in the King's Indian, or we would be in the King's Indian territory. But Charlie 6 also is a move that very well fits in to the symmetrical Greenfeld. White goes bishop to golf 2, bishop to golf 2. And black pushes pawn to delta 5, pawn to delta 5. And white goes for the exchange for getting a symmetrical position, plays Charlie takes delta 5, Charlie takes delta 5, and black also plays Charlie takes delta 5, Charlie takes delta 5. So now we have a completely symmetrical pawn structure. It doesn't mean that white is without chances playing for an edge here. But of course, one can suspect that white rather wants to play very, very solidly and maybe hope that Fischer would overpress his position in his attempts to score 11 out of 11. White goes knight to Charlie 3, knight to Charlie 3, and black plays bishop to golf 7, bishop to golf 7. And white goes pawn to echo 3, pawn to echo 3. And here, I'm not completely happy with seeing that move. It's of course not a big mistake or something, but white plans to put the knight on echo 2, the golf knight on echo 2. And all right, it can get to foxtrot 4, putting pressure on delta 5. That's fine. But at the end of the day, white will have a less actively placed king's knight than black has. So I think that it puts white in a psychologically inferior mindset. I don't know, of course, about Byrne's mindset, but at least you start to not giving up space, so to say, even if it is, okay, you put your knight on the second rank, black placed his rank on his third rank, so standing a little bit more actively. And it is a risk if you play for the draw that you will stop doing active things. You will just try to parry threats. But that is a very dangerous way. It's better to play actively, get a good position, and maybe get the draw out of strength. So, anyway, black played castles kingside, castles kingside, and white played knight golf to echo 2, knight golf to echo 2. Black played knight to Charlie 6, knight to Charlie 6. And white castled kingside, castles kingside. Here we have many opportunities for black, of course. One could think of developing the bishop from Charlie 8 to foxtrot 5. I don't think that would be a bad thing to do, but it is often so in these structures that the bishop, it looks okay on foxtrot 5, but it actually can get a bit vulnerable there. If you also have to push pawn to echo 6 to protect delta 5 further on in the game, then the bishop can start to lack good squares to go to from foxtrot 5. So white might swap it off or harass it with hotel 3 and golf 4. So bishop to foxtrot 5 would not be my choice, but I very much like Fischer's pawn to bravo 6. He played pawn to bravo 6. And he invests a move, like another pawn move, to develop the bishop, but the bishop would get to a better square. That would be either bravo 7 or, as in the game, alpha 6. Here I would have liked that white played knight to foxtrot 4. Knight to foxtrot 4, that was not played in the game. The idea is to put some pressure on delta 5, forcing black to push echo 6, pawn to echo 6. And why is that? Why do I want that so badly? Yeah, because if white then has this pressure on delta 5, it will be more difficult for black to push echo 5. And we will see in the game that black manages to push echo 5. And this is actually a result of that white placed his knight on echo 2 instead of foxtrot 3. Had the knight been on foxtrot 3, echo 5 would maybe have been played, but there would be a lot of exchanges there. Nothing to worry about. But if black can play echo 5 and then after exchange get his queen's knight centralized on echo 5, then both black knights would be superior to the two white knights. So we will get this illustrated in the game. So here I would have liked knight to foxtrot 4. But white played pawn to bravo 3. Pawn to bravo 3. Also planning to fianchetto the bishop on bravo 2 or playing bishop to alpha 3. Stockfish wants to play bishop delta 2 instead, developing the piece as soon as possible, and then just play, rook Charlie 1, queen Charlie 2, rook foxtrot delta 1, and maybe even bishop echo 1 to protect foxtrot 2. The bishop wouldn't stand that fantastically there, but as we will see in the game, the vice bishop on alpha 3 plays no significant role in the game. So it might have done a better job on delta 2. Black played bishop alpha 6, bishop to alpha 6. And white went bishop to alpha 3, bishop to alpha 3. Now the pawn on echo 7 is pinned, and that is the pawn push to echo 5 is what black should be playing for here. There are not so many other interesting pawn pushes in the position simply. So black plays rook to echo 8, rook to echo 8. And one might ask, why shouldn't white go for a pawn push to echo 4? Yeah, there might be some exchanges there, but the delta 4 pawn would be very weak because black's pieces are actively placed. So it would be a weakening move. And that depends on that white's pieces stand a bit more passively than black's. It's only the knight that differs, the knight with the king's knight's placement. And also, one can say that because white spent a tempo, echo 3, and then knight golf echo 2, black is a little bit ahead in development. Very minimal. But the rook is on echo 8 already and is ready to support the pawn push. White's pieces are not really yet well placed to support a pawn push to echo 4. And now it is difficult also to play knight foxtrot 4. You first have to unpin the knight by rook echo 1, for example. Okay, white plays queen to delta 2, queen to delta 2. Yeah, this is an okay move, but I would have liked better to unpin the knight with rook echo 1. That would make it possible for white to put pressure on delta 5 by knight to foxtrot 4. Knight delta 2, okay, it is a developing move. It develops the queen a little bit, and it connects the rooks. But it is actually also a bit exposed there, which is something that is maybe not easy to understand. But if black manages to put a knight on echo 4, it might force white to capture there on echo 4, but then black can get a stronghold on echo 4 pawn there, and maybe also plonk a minor piece on delta 3. That is a theme that we will see in the game. Yeah, so after queen to delta 2, we finally come to a dramatic change of structure. Black played pawn to echo 5. Pawn to echo 5 was played by Fischer. And yeah, white took. Delta takes echo 5. Delta takes echo 5. White didn't want to allow black to push further with echo 4. So, knight takes echo 5 was Fischer's response, of course. Knight takes echo 5. And now we see a problem with the knight on echo 2. White cannot win material by capturing on delta 5, because at the end of the day, the queen on delta 2 needs to protect both echo 2 and delta 5 to make that work. And obviously, that would be too much. If black takes on echo 2, let's say knight takes delta 5, knight takes delta 5, bishop takes delta 5, black can play bishop takes echo 2. Even stronger actually, knight to foxtrot 3 check. Because after bishop takes foxtrot 3, there comes queen takes delta 2. If white plays knight takes delta 5, and black captures knight takes delta 5, and then captures with the queen on delta 5, then at least black can win material by bishop takes echo 2. Even if white can take on alpha 8, black would end up with a material advantage. So these are such things that appear when you play too passively. Tactics favor the one with better coordination. And also I would say that had white played rook echo 1 instead of queen to delta 2, it would have been far more difficult for black to carry through echo 5, as the knight on echo 2 would be defended not only by the queen but also by the rook. So then probably white could capture on delta 5. So after knight takes echo 5, white played rook foxtrot to delta 1. Rook foxtrot to delta 1. And that is actually a serious error. It doesn't look like it, but it is. It is understandable that white wants to contest the delta 3 square by playing queen to Charlie 2, because we expect now that black will plonk a knight on delta 3 that is defended by the bishop on alpha 6. Moreover, if the knight can stand on delta 3, this other knight can then come to echo 4. That was what I hinted on earlier when I commented on white's queen delta 2. And as the queen is attacked, then if there would be an exchange on echo 4, black can then take with the pawn and have even better support for the knight on delta 3. It would be a very difficult position to play for white. Oh, well then, why did then rook foxtrot to delta 1, why was that so much worse than rook alpha to delta 1? Yeah, it's because it weakened the foxtrot 2 square. And we will see how that actually will get into concrete, bring white into concrete and severe trouble. Black played knight to delta 3, knight to delta 3. And white played queen to Charlie 2, queen to Charlie 2, as expected. Now the knight on delta 3 is attacked. But as white has abandoned the king side with his rook from foxtrot 1, there is a weak spot, and that is of course foxtrot 2. And if foxtrot 2 falls, echo 3 will be very loose. So I think this is not something that is so difficult for a grandmaster to spot. But what is more difficult is the follow-up. Yeah, we will see what happened. Knight takes foxtrot 2. Knight takes foxtrot 2. White captured, king takes foxtrot 2. King takes foxtrot 2. And black played knight to golf 4 check. Knight to golf 4 check. White retreated, of course, king to golf 1. King to golf 1, not so much else to do. And black played knight takes echo 3. Knight takes echo 3. Forking the queen on Charlie 2 and the rook on delta 1. And white played queen to delta 2. Queen to delta 2. This is a very important position in the game. I would say maybe the most difficult position to handle. Many players would maybe take on delta 1. Okay, black at least wins the exchange, but white would then have two pieces for a rook and 2 pawns, and the black attack would have been stopped. It would be gone, because black doesn't have many more active pieces. So white would be, I think it would be even a promising position for white. The delta 5 pawn would be weak, for example. But if you remember the lesson from Botvinnik-Capablanca, there we saw how Botvinnik sacrificed pieces on the queen side and then managed to swap off all the remaining pieces. It was actually just a knight, I think, that remained as defense for the black king. So it resulted in a position where black was a piece up, but where things actually happened. That was around the black king. And there white had a very far advanced passed pawn and a queen. So, although if you just count the pieces, black was up material. But if we count material where it really mattered, around the black king, because it was a king's attack going on, and white also was about promoting an advanced passport. There, white was up material, a queen up actually. So, of course, thinking like this, then we have to take into account the time factor. Because the opponent must not be allowed to bring back defenders in time, because in such case the defender would be up material, so to say. But to liquidate the few remaining pieces that defend the king's position is a theme that is the same in Botvinnik-Capablanca and this Byrne-Fischer. So, having studied such a game, Botvinnik-Capablanca, makes it easier to find this very difficult move played by Fischer. He played knight takes golf 2, knight takes golf 2, and white played king takes golf 2, king takes golf 2. And now we see that, okay, there is a knight on echo 2 that is nominally on the king side. But it is difficult for it to really defend against multiple black pieces. And despite that black exchanged off his beloved knight, a kingdom for such a knight, like Richard III would say in the Shakespeare drama, that knight was actually exchanged for the bishop on golf 2, because that was the remaining important defender. When we now have exchanged on golf 2, then we must think of, okay, what has it meant? The white squares have been weakened. Black actually has a knight square bishop, and white no longer has its counterpart on golf 2. So if black can put the bishop on the long diagonal from Bravo 7 and open the diagonal, pushing the delta pawn, then black's king would be in severe trouble. According to this logic, you know, it's not so difficult actually to find the moves if you develop this chess understanding. And I wouldn't pretend that I easily would have played the moves that Fischer played. But having seen the Botvinnik-Capablanca game and the Byrne-Fischer game, as we are watching right now, then I could have better chances of spotting important possibilities in my own games. So, black pushed pawn to delta 4. Pawn to delta 4. Very, very strong move. Now the knight on Charlie 3 is threatened. And if it moves, then the knight on echo 2 would hang simply. So it can't really move. So white has to take. Knight takes delta 4. Knight takes delta 4. And now we see how these two bishops of black have a fantastic scope suddenly. This bishop on golf 7 was not looking that great like 7-8 moves ago. It faced the white pawn on delta 4 that was defended by a pawn on echo 3, for example. But now it has the long diagonal, pressurizing delta 4, the delta 4 knight. And now the other bishop that has been doing a great job so far goes back to Bravo 7. Bishop to Bravo 7. Check. And here, white has two moves basically to choose from, I would say. You can't drop the knight back to Foxtrot 3 first of all. Or, well, you can, but you shouldn't. Because at least black can then swap queens on delta 2. Queen takes queen and rook takes queen, and then the bishop could grab the rook on alpha 1. So then regaining a lot of material, and black would be, black is clearly winning. So the knight can't get back to Foxtrot 3. Remains moving the king. We have 3 squares. If the king would go to Foxtrot 1, then I would say no, sorry, I have to correct myself with my previous comment. Knight to Foxtrot 3 is not good, as I already told, but maybe, the long diagonal is not open. There is a knight on Charlie 3 in that position. So after queen takes queen, rook takes queen, black could play bishop takes Charlie 3, regaining a piece, but at the same time forking the 2 rooks. So then black would be material up. So that is more correct. So if the king goes, instead after bishop Bravo 7 check, the king goes to Foxtrot 1, then black's attack would continue by, I think the better would be queen to delta 7. Queen to delta 7. And then black has rook alpha delta 8 would be a possible follow-up. Queen to hotel 3 check would also be quite tricky for white to defend against. Simply black is down a little bit of material, a piece for a pawn currently. But if black can activate even the alpha rook, then all black pieces would be employed in the attack. White would have a sleeping rook on alpha 1, a misplaced bishop on alpha 3, and 2 very vulnerable knights in the middle of the board. So black would actually, in reality, rather be held as being up material rather than anything else. So king to Foxtrot 1, then we would have queen to delta 7, maybe followed up by rook alpha delta 8 and queen to hotel 3. You can go through the more precise tactics by yourself after the game. King to Foxtrot 2 might look a bit better. At least the king wouldn't be standing on those vulnerable light squares because of white lost the light square bishops. But after king to Foxtrot 2, black can still play queen to delta 7, and there are exactly the same threats like after king Foxtrot 1. There are rook alpha delta 8 and queen to hotel 3. And it's actually impossible for white to defend against those threats. So it's I think Stockfish gives an advantage of black being up 5 pawns or something, despite being down a minor piece. Yeah, and the king on hotel 2, foxtrot 2, when the queen comes to hotel 3, then the pawn on hotel 2 would hang. So that also is a problem for white. Maybe the king has to retreat to golf 1 anyway, just losing a tempo. So Byrne played another move. He played king to golf 1, king to golf 1. And here actually Fischer blundered. And I am a little bit surprised. I listened to the commentary on this game by Garry Kasparov in the chessable version of his book, the volume 4 of his book, My Great Predecessors, where he comments a lot of games of the big heroes of the past, including Fischer. Because what black should have played here, which he didn't do. Now I must also check so I don't commit an error myself. It happens. Not that rarely, I'm afraid. Yes, black could play bishop takes delta 4. Bishop takes delta 4 check after king to golf 1. And yeah, it's necessary for white to regain the material, I would say. So queen takes delta 4 would be the move. Otherwise, black would even be a pawn up and having a fantastic position. Queen takes delta 4 was played by should have been played by white, and then it comes very important intermediate move: rook to echo 1 check. Rook to echo 1. You see that this didn't work had white played king to foxtrot 2 or king to foxtrot 1. But here it does. Rook to echo 1. And white cannot take on echo 1 without losing the queen on delta 4. We check, and then also the knight on Charlie 3 would be on breeze. So if after rook to echo 1, white then plays king to foxtrot 2 instead, which is the only remaining option, then black exchanges queens on delta 4. Queen takes delta 4 check. White has to take. Rook takes delta 4. And black finally would pick up the rook on alpha 1. Rook takes alpha 1. With a decisive material advantage. So that is what Fischer should have played. And yeah, it's very human that you play a brilliant game, doing all the difficult things, understanding that you have to swap on golf 2, you sacrifice the next pawn, delta 4 was played to open the long diagonal, but here Fischer played queen to delta 7. And actually, according to Stockfish, the advantage now drops from 5 pawns up for black to 0.75, which is still an advantage, but not like 5 pawns. And Stockfish claims that after queen to delta 7, white can survive by knight delta to bravo 5. Knight delta to bravo 5. I can say that there will be complications, like if black plays queen to Charlie 6, threatening to come in on the light squares. White would play knight to delta 5. Knight to delta 5. And there will be tactical blows on both sides. We can see that, for example, black can win the exchange on alpha 1, but also white will have his chances because now the white knights are active. So black would remain on top, but not with such a winning position, but with a clear advantage. But talking about the human side, we can both it's Kasparov checks through these old masterpieces with the chess engines, but maybe he didn't do it to the end of this game because he didn't note that black's last move is a blunder. Byrne, he didn't see that knight delta to bravo 5 would at least keeping in the battle for a while. So he probably just saw the upcoming threats like rook alpha delta 8 and queen to hotel 3, those two main threats that we already have touched upon. And he committed a blunder, he resigned. Yeah, such things happen, even between strong grandmasters. We can see, when we come back to the psychological discussion that we touched upon in the beginning, it is understandable. We played 21 moves. White seemed not to have committed any major errors. It was actually rook foxtrot delta 1 that ruined the position completely. So it must have been very demoralizing for white to see his position falling apart. And then you stop looking for what chances that might anyway remain. So that is one lesson. We can also learn the lesson that I think it was a drop of concentration by Fischer. Or maybe he thought it was cuter to play queen delta 7 and win on rook alpha delta 8 and so on. Maybe it was aesthetically nicer. But this exchange on delta 4 followed by rook echo 1 check that I already have discussed was of course the way to go. And if you see a secure way to end up with a clear material advantage in a better position, winning advantage in this case, go for it. Make the most pragmatic choice. From Fischer's point of view, when being faced with this rock-solid setup that white adopted, then we should learn from his way of just continue playing, doing good moves, not playing super aggressively, just develop your pieces and wait for a possibility that might show up at the end. It doesn't always. Sometimes a strong white player can hold the field against a even stronger black opponent. But often there will come mistakes will be committed in the game. So I would suggest that if you have a situation where you really want to play for the win with black, it's not always so advisable to go for the bang, slam, dash thing, because it might work at some cases. Sometimes everything just after all explosions, after all fireworks, just ends up in nothing. So it is better to play like normal. Don't stress. You have a long game in front of you, a long game ahead, and just trust in your end game capacity if you can't win in the middle game. So I think we can also learn something valuable for how Fischer played in this position, in this game where he wanted to reach 11 out of 11, which he actually did. And I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you have learned a bit of chess, psychology, strategy, different things. So I ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and to share the video so that more people will get to know about, so far as I know, the only YouTube chess channel that is accessible for blind and visually impaired players. Thank you for now.